Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a special guest. He comes to us from the Azorus project. His name is Chris. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Chris is the project lead of Azorus. And before we begin, I'd like to preface, the conversation with a bit of a general introduction to the projects that I cover to get you guys up to speed. So, Azorus is a UTXO blockchain intelligence platform. It is essentially a software that makes blockchain data easy to use. As everybody knows by now, if you're watching this, blockchains are a list of transactions. And to be useful, these lists of transactions need some sort of organization. So Azorus structures UTXO-based blockchain data into a database of relationships. And that makes it easier to sort, analyze, and visualize. With cross-chain data as well, a larger data set will be available that will allow for new use cases. It allows for technical infrastructure to be easily accessed across several different UTXO blockchains. Within such an ecosystem, it'll be possible as well to buy and sell decentralized services, analysis of reports, and software to extend the capabilities of the core product. It'll be aimed at data analysis and programmers as the core product, but there will be more room to extend the product to a general audience and create, more of a overall information ecosystem. So that was a mouthful. Right off the bat, can you explain in your own words why Azorus is necessary to create in the first place?
Yeah. First of all, great summary. Where did you get that? No, just kidding.
I got it from your one pager, of course.
Thanks. So, to start off the bat, right? Before answering the question, just to summarize on what you said earlier, right? What we believe in is blockchain data should be accessible to everyone, right? And so, what Azorus attempts to do is building like that web interface for users to query the data, visualize the data, and retrieve insights from the platform. All for the different UTXO blockchains as well as their Dapps ecosystem. And so, why is it even necessary, right? So I do see multiple issues with the current state of affairs. So the first one is the technical barrier. Just to get some of this data up and running, you need to know a little bit of programming, right? You need to at least know how to run a node, launch an Explorer, backend Explorer, create the views, right, for the data that you want to get, whether it's SQL, the R or Python programming languages, right? And then after that, you get your analysis. You also need to share it as well, right? So those are multiple steps in that pipeline for a potential data scientist or blockchain analyst in the future. The second one is hardware barriers. Not everyone has the means to store some of this data on their local machine, right? And so, for example, Ethereum is over 1 terabyte. Even historical data for Bitcoin is at 900 gigabytes or so. Last time I checked, so not everyone has that capability to store out that information. The third one is ownership, right? Sometimes I talk a lot about Dune Analytics, but I would say they're our closest direct competitor. Back in February, they were recently funded and valued at $1 billion. And all of the creators on the platform, all of the analysts who are creating all of this content, who are creating all of these analysis, they don't see any of that, right? And so the closest thing in terms of incentivizing people to use their platform is if you are a top analyst, then we'll give you more visibility and stuff like that. But that's, there might be job bounties, right? But at the end of the day, if the entire service goes down, so does all of your work.
Now you were referring to which company again? Glassnode?
Sorry, Dune Analytics is
Dune.
Dune Analytics, right? Yeah, great product, right? But then one of the issues that I see is ownership, right? So two more before I wrap up your question, right? The fourth one is skill shortage, right? Just in the blockchain developer space alone, if you look at 2019. Year over year, there was a 300% increase in demand for blockchain developers, right? So if you think about people building more dApps, people building more products around this space, you're going to need people who know and understand and how to leverage blockchain data. And so long
Hmm.
story short, right? And everyone says this. I do think it's a little bit cliche, but I do see that this is like really early phases, right? If you think about back in the early days of the internet, and I'm starting to show my age a little bit, right? In the early '90s, internet websites they had statistics counters at the bottom of the website. It's like, oh, 5,000 people looked at this page, right? And so I think like Explorer um, blockchain explorers are kind of like that, right? They show you for the most part like the nitty gritty, but it doesn't give you enough information. And so something like Glassnode is like the Google Analytics, where it's like a plug and play, where they give you dictated views, centralized views to say like, you should look at it this way, right? This
Hmm.
is how you should look at blockchain data. And so it's very, very centralized view of dictating what people should look at. And so the way I see it is Azorus, right, should be the next evolution of that, of the blockchain analytics space, making it more customizable, making it more flexible, right? Not having a website tell us what views should we look at. Here's all of the data, do as you will with it that makes sense for your needs. And if you look at the trend of the Web2 technology companies, that's kind of how we've started, right? Basic counters, plug and play solutions, and now for the most part, most of these top technology companies that have their own analytic solutions to squeeze out a little bit more of the data.
Wow. Yeah, that is a lot.
Sorry, that was a lot.
That is a lot.
This
Yeah.
keeps me up at night.
um, so you mentioned Dune Analytics. You mentioned Glassnode. Will there be? I think of Glassnode. Will there be also in the future sort of a tiered system that there will be like kind of a component of here's the data that you are free to view. Then you have a tier one, tier two, tier three, or how will it function in your way?
Yeah, good question. So I think uh, if we stick to the idea that blockchain data should be accessible to everyone, right? My
Yes.
answer is yeah, it should be free. If you want to see existing views that people created, absolutely should be free. If you want to see reports and stuff that people create, should totally be free. I don't think Glassnode offers that, right? They have some basic views, but you need to
Yeah.
pay like $30 a month or something like that to see a little bit more functionality. And if you want like enterprise grade stuff, that's like $10,000 a year or so. So that's like the basic level. After that, we don't know the pricing structure yet, but the idea is if you want to start creating reports on the platform, there would be like an annual subscription, something very low, right? To say just to cover some of the initial costs. And so those people, if you want to create reports, you can totally do it. And then after that, then there's like enterprise level where we work with like the individuals to see like, okay, does the current product work for your needs, or do we need to build something a little bit more customized for what you're looking for?
Why did you choose for it to be UTXO based? Why only these chains? Not why not the account based models? Why not other different models of transaction architecture?
Yeah. So I don't think I'm smart enough to talk about the intricacies, right, and the merits between like UTXO versus accounts-based model, right? I will say personally, I just wanted privacy to a certain extent, right? I mean, obviously, I'm doxing myself over Zoom, right? But maybe financial privacy is really important to me, and so what I love about, and correct me if I'm wrong, right? What I love most about like the UTXO model is the ability to have a new address for every single transaction, right? And from my experience with like Ethereum, right? If you pop your address into like Etherscan or something, you can see that same address being used on like Polygon or like Binance Smart Chain or anything like that. If I want to, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, if I want to create a completely new address for each transaction, I would have to create like a new wallet every single time. And so for me, like it just comes down to like the practicality of being able to keep my privacy on a single wallet, having multiple addresses.
Yeah. I mean, as far as my experience with the Ergo mobile wallet, yeah, you can derive different addresses from one main one, but they are technically, although they are kind of inextricably tied to one another, you can also create a different wallet address that's completely separate, or again, derivatives of the same one, which, they go back to the main balance, but they are essentially different serialized wallet addresses that you couldn't, unless you were very, very thorough, you're not going to be able to draw too many links between them. So that in of itself, that's an interesting point. Account-based models are what they are. They're not necessarily the best way of maybe performing transactions from my experience. And there's something about UTXO box being consumed every time you want to spend it that just helps to, I assume, without understanding the intricacies of, like something like the Ergo mixer, just helps those types of things along, where you're just able to consume it. It's like if you had money, real life money, versus having a debit card or a credit card account, where you're going to use the same card every time in an account-based model in order to kind of get the net sum of a balance of that debit card account or checking account. And then having a UTXO model of a way of performing transaction, you have like $100 bill that's in cash, then you're able to send it, exchange it for some sort of good and get your change back, but nobody has any evidence you had the original $100 in the first place. So that makes a lot of sense. So you're building on Ergo, correct? Primarily?
Starting on Ergo, yes, correct.
Why did you choose Ergo in the first place?
Good question. It's kind of a long story, but we have some time about it, right?
We have plenty of time.
Exactly. So I'll start from the beginning, right? Not ashamed to say it, right? I aped in at Ergo when it was like $18 and some change, right? A year ago or so, right? And then during that time, I spent most of my time in the Ergo trading / like basis speculation Discord, right? And so during this like downward spiral from $18 to like, I think it was like $8, $10, $5, whatever it was like nothing but like negativity in that Discord channel. And so at the same time, I think it was Glasgow, he linked out to the Ergo manifesto. And so I took a look at it like really quickly. And I think it changed my view on Ergo and what I was doing and why I was in it, right? Because I do think that there is that we don't talk a lot about is there's two facets to what we're doing with this type of technology. There's the technology space, right? The technology aspect about like who's the best layer one and who's the what's the fastest, what's the most secure, privatization, and all that fun stuff. So there's that. But I think what's not talked about enough is like the vision, right, and the culture, and where we eventually want to head to. Because I do think that, and I still believe that technology will always change, right? You started with horses, then you had cars, then you had boats, and you had planes, right? Technology is always going to change, but that vision should not change. That vision should be like the North Star endpoint as to where we want to go. Right? And so I think this is where Ergo and the Ergo manifesto completely like changed my viewpoint on that. And so during this time, I was like, did a little bit of self-reflection. I was like, well, how can I contribute to this, right? How can I be a little bit more productive instead of just sitting inside like baseless speculation and watching the price continue to tumble? And so that's when I contributed to like, I created like the Tidy Ergo data science package, which is our programming package where you can interface with like the Ergo blockchain statistics. I created like the Ergo Dex pricing charts when Ergo Dex didn't have prices at the time. And then learn to create some NFTs, right? And so, long answer short, around this same time frame, I was trying to set up my own node, trying to set up my own backend explorer. I was like, this is like really, really hard, right? How do we expect newcomers to adopt this technology or this infrastructure when it's like assembling a nuclear reactor with like nothing but like straws and duct tape? And so I was like, there has to be like an easier way to bridge the gap between Web 2 skeptics and like Web3 natives, right? And so I continue to believe that blockchain technology, the crypto space, we have a branding problem. I still don't think that people are ready to dive headfirst into it. And so this is where I and the team came up with like Azorus, right? How do we bridge that gap? how do we make sure that we not only handle people who are already Web3 natives, but how do we facilitate people who are specifically data scientists, machine learning expert, like blockchain analysts? How do we migrate them over into this new
Right.
this new world? Right.
Yeah. New paradigm. Before I let you continue, I think that's kind of the similar goal that I had with this series. I feel like you go on YouTube, God bless them, but all of the YouTube videos I see, the majority of them are complete clickbaity, baseless speculation. Like I'm drawing a lot of parallels between what you're saying. And to be frank, there are pros and cons of that, right? You have more onboarding of people that might be interested in diving headfirst into the retail aspect of investing in crypto. But the problem with that as well is that the majority of the time they will lose because they don't understand what they're investing in. They don't understand. They get too greedy. They don't know when to cash out. They don't understand their taxes domestically too well. And there's a lot of similar problems there. But I felt like, okay, so we're going to talk about Flux. We're going to talk about Ergo going 100x. That's not very helpful to understand why we're in this space in the first place. So I just feel like, I don't know, I just wanted to segue into that a bit and say like, yeah, that's kind of how I feel as well. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing as well. And trying to shed light, like, some people I've interviewed and they're like, wait, you want 2 hours? 2 hours for an interview? Because most of the videos online are half an hour or less, and the majority of it doesn't have any substance. You don't come out more educated than when you came in. So I just want to say that very briefly. So continue.
No, I just want to say, thank you for even doing these series, right? I think it's totally what's needed. And it goes back to my point about like how I think blockchain / crypto has a branding problem, right? For the most part, it might be a scam, it might be a gambling casino, or people think that it's a way to get from rags to riches, right? Let me just buy something that's like less, like 0.0001 penny, and I'm going to get my Lambo in a couple of months, right? Not really a Lambo fan. I'm more a Ferrari person if I ever get there, right? But we do have a branding problem, and my goal, at least with Azorus, or hopefully with what you're doing, is like you change that narrative, right? We, rather than having other people drive that narrative, we're the ones who pioneer and talk about what not only what you can do, but what that future would potentially look like. So I thank you for even working on your YouTube series.
Oh, I appreciate that more than you know. I was actually watching, now that you mentioned like investing into crypto, that is, almost like the penny stock equivalent of a share of a stock, right? I recently kind of played in the background The Wolf of Wall Street again. And now 10 years ago, I didn't really understand too much about like the 80s and stockbrokers and the commissions and all that. But once I looked at it again, I was hearing in the background all the ridiculousness of the narrative around that movie. Essentially, he was peddling penny stocks, offering it to retail investor Joe Schmoes, trying to get them to invest and over leverage into a position where he would get a commission from. And I don't know. I call it how I see it. If you're on YouTube and you're peddling a bunch of speculative cryptos, it doesn't feel much different than what Jordan Belfort was doing in that movie at the time. So I think that's like you said, crypto has a branding problem because there's a difference between the technology, the things you could build with that technology, and then also the tokenized so-called assets that would go intertwined with that technology and the things you could build on it. And most people are just focused on getting a return for some sort of speculative tokenized asset, and then say, okay, that's the entire crypto industry. Bitcoin is worth nothing. Everything and everything built on top of that, all these little profile pictures and all this stuff is worth nothing. But it's like such a tip of the iceberg way of looking at things, and it's forgivable because the branding has promoted baseless speculation and a bunch of bullshit coming into space and then breaking down and leaving a lot of people in dust just kind of like a early 2000s .com bubble. Well, whereas we're not focused on the real promise of the internet, we're just focused on all these companies trying to do like IPOs and just trying to get their websites out there and say all these crazy ideas of what we can do with the internet. Please invest in us, and then they go debunk, and then they go
preach.
So
preach. And if you're watching this, right, definitely read the Ergo Manifesto. I highly encourage you, even if you're not invested in it, right? Take a look at it.
Yeah, well, I interviewed the core dev of Ergo, right, Alex, and what surprised me about what he said was how little it meant to kind of do these things for him. It was more about building the infrastructure that he will also surprisingly leave in a few years, and leave it in capable hands so it can just continue onward and prosper, and anybody can. Like, he's taking himself so much out of the equation. When I was really interviewing him, I realized, like, yeah, this guy, he's doing it now, but he won't be here in a few years, and everybody's kind of looking at him as kind of like the founder, the Messiah complex. He's the Satoshi equivalent of Ergo, but really he's saying he's gonna leave. You guys better be ready to take on the blockchain, and don't wait for another Ergo hack. Do an Azorus, do whatever other projects are coming out now. Swamp Audio I interviewed recently. Like, people like you need to take the reins of the blockchain and just begin building, and forget about, am I going to get enough likes or support, or am I going to get am I going to win the Ergo hack? It really means nothing if it's not meant, doing it for the right reasons. And that's really the thing I got out of like 3 hours of interviewing him. He's not going to be in this equation. This is going to be a public permissionless blockchain, just like we're seeing. But in reality, it's really going to be up to us to kind of make Ergo what it is, and the miners and the community and all that stuff, because he's not going to be around that much longer. A few years go by like this, and then we have public faces with the Ergo Foundation, but even they say, I interviewed Joe, the business manager for Ergo, and he's like, the foundation is a necessary evil. We wish we didn't even have to have one. But living in this space the way it is now, to get onto exchange listings and give out grants for certain projects and stuff, we need to be doing this, but it's not going to be forever. It's like a Bitcoin, third generation cryptocurrency based on Bitcoin that can do everything and more. So it's like, it's up to us.
I completely agree with that. Small little tangent, right? When I'm working on these, when I work for these Web2 technology companies, right, one of the biggest things that we always think about is program longevity, right? And so how do we keep the channel running, or like the program running, the moment we decide to step away, right? Especially in the tech sector, everyone leaves the company after like maybe average 3 years or so. Someone's going to leave, right? How do you build something that that stands the test of time, so that you can go to a different company, and the person who decides to take the helm afterwards continues running with it, right? Continues making sure like the original core principles of the program that you design continues to operate going forward and improve over time. And so this is what I can relate to, right? And this is what I love most about what we're doing in space, at least in Ergo, at least in what the Ergo community is doing, is we're building the tools, we're setting the foundations. And should we step away for X number of years because we're tired of the space for a while, and I just want to focus on my family, right? It's still going to keep chugging along, right? Because we have those systems in place, those values in place to continue operating. So so kudos to you for calling that out, and the rest of the Ergo Foundation and the community for being able to recognize that.
Yeah, that's a real tenet of decentralization. The co-founder of Flux also, when I interviewed him, he's like, if I die tomorrow, can this survive without me, my personality, and so-called leadership being in the space? And that would be one of the defining factors, right? It's like if a president, God forbid, in the past, they've been assassinated, there's at least a system in place to get the vice president up or whatever. Just keep the United States functioning. Continuity, and a lot of change in the space. unfortunately, when they are venture capitalist backed, there is that pressure to get a return on your investment, and that's kind of the ugly other side of things when you're looking for funding and you're looking for other things. Resiliency might not be, and long term longevity might not be, part of the first and foremost desire of the people behind those protocols giving funding, and then you get Solana coming down and trying to make a phone for that nobody asked for, and a million other things. But I digress. So
yeah.
Two questions to follow up. I'll give it right back to you. What you're building with Azorus is open source, correct?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, not immediately, but we'll eventually get there. And so there is, I can offer some insights on that, about that, right? And so I've been building data products for a better part of like a decade and a half or so. And so I know how to build data products from getting from 0 to 1, right? But what happens after that? How do we take that from step number 2 to infinity, right? And so that's where I believe like the community can come in, right? That's where the next steps is going to make Azorus a lot better. And so the way that I see it is, and maybe and this kind of like rolls up into the overall like Ergo ethos, is like we'll lay the foundation, launch a working version that I personally myself am happy with, and then eventually we'll like open source, right? Then everyone can contribute to it. And so and everyone keeps asking me these questions. So short answer, yes. Long answer, not immediately, but we'll eventually get there.
Right. The eventually get there is the most important part.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And and so it's like we do need to make that it's a business decision, right? It's like a trade-off, right? To how do I get from the idea that I have in my head and let it and launch it so that everyone can use it. I know exactly what needs to be done. Or if we like open source it, there are all these other things that we didn't think about that is good, right? To cover our asses and make sure there's no security flaws and everything like that. So I do understand that there's like pros and cons of each, and so that's why that's my immediate answer.
Yeah, Sky Harbor is kind of in that precarious situation where people are like, "When are you going to open source your thing, your code and everything?" And they're like, "Not yet. We will in a future date." But to your credit, and also like knowing that you are building things up, but you also want there to be a financially sustainable incentive to doing so. That there has to be some sort of real leverage with being a first mover, and holding off on making everything open source from the get-go allows you to kind of benefit from that before somebody else can kind of piggyback on what you've already created. And that's just, it's a part of life. As long as you're eventually going to make it open source, that's more than enough for people to say, hey, you know what, let them figure that out. Don't worry about that so much. It'll get there eventually. Now, you could have easily just left Azorus to be envisioned just for Ergo, and it would have narrowed down kind of your scope of ambition. Is there any particular reason that you decided to open this up for several UTXO chains that can be used, with other ones from? Well, first of all, let me ask a two-part question. Apart from that part, can any UTXO-based chain eventually use the intelligence service of Azorus, or is it going to be particular chains?
The answer is yes. Eventually, any UTXO service, correct.
Okay. And the first part of that question was, is there any particular reason you chose to broaden the scope to multiple chains versus just narrowly focusing on Ergo, which would have been easier to envision?
Yeah, I think it is good to have a what we call in the corporate space is a BHAG, BHAG, which stands for big hairy asshole, right? And so that keeps our vision broader. It keeps our perspective on how it helps us keep tabs on how the space is doing, what's going on, right? We can't follow everything, but we at least, if we have a certain point that'll direct us on where we should go, then we should definitely take it. And so The reason for that is there is this whole UTXO alliance, right? It's about promoting and pushing forward for this idea that the UTXO model should be the premier blockchain service in the future, right? And so that's like the overall idea behind it. And so long term, we do eventually want to get there, right? That's the ambitious goal. That's where we want to head towards. We want to integrate all of these different ecosystems into the Azorus platform. But on the other side of the coin, right? That's why we're starting with Ergo, right? For the most part, it has most systems up and running. It has most services up and running. This is where we started from. One of our key principles is like start small, and that's what we're doing here. The idea is you start on Ergo, you build the platform, you figure out all the little idiosyncrasies that maybe we may not have missed that we could potentially incorporate. Get it to a good enough point that when it's time, then we can easily integrate all of these other UTXO blockchains onto the platform. And so, so to answer your question, I think it's good to have a ambitious goal, right, about where we're going. So that way, and it goes back to like technology is always going to change, right? We should have a vision on where we want to go, right? And so that's our long-term goal, right? That's where what we're trying to achieve. But also, it's not to say that we can't be ambitious. We can't only focus on Ergo for now, which is what we're doing, right? But I do see, if it goes back to your first question, right? There's a greater need for this data. People are looking for flexibility. They're looking for customization, right? It goes back to like the whole technical barriers and hardware issues that I was talking about earlier, skill shortage and everything. And so, I think it's good to have that ambition.
Yeah. What particular tools are you using for Azorus that are found on Ergo right now currently?
So the primary one is the Ergo Backend Explorer, right? And so that's where it takes all of your blockchain data and then stores into like a Postgres database. The other couple ones that we are looking into is you have the Ergo Dex backend. So Ergo Dex also stores all of the every single transaction that happens on their Dex, stores that into a database as well. I believe Ergo Pad is also releasing their backend as well as Sky Harbor, right? And so, so to answer, bring it back to like your initial question, right? It's that's another hardware issue. People need to understand how to get that up and running. That's also a technical barrier issue. People need to know how to like run a Docker instance or set up a node or run all of these different GitHub repos to get that up and running. With Azorus, right, you can have like a view to say, here's all the tables for Ergo, here's all the tables for Ergo Pad, and here are all the different ways that you can analyze and visualize that data.
Yeah, nodes are not easily, I shouldn't say easily, nodes aren't as well understood as the mining aspects, just because of the financial incentives that go with mining are just more famous. What role does, for those people that don't know, how important is are nodes for Azorus?
Oh yeah, they're absolutely important. I mean, even outside of Azorus, right? If we talk about like just to say like Ergo, right? The nodes are the ones who validate the historical transactions, right? They're the ones who say like, here is the actual ledger history of the network. For Azorus, at least, and we're still trying to figure out like the mechanics behind it. To run a node for Azorus. But the importance of that is being able to provide what we're calling like a data provider or data operator, right? Being able to provide all of this historical data for us. So that way we don't need to centralize it, right? That way it's not like on a AWS server somewhere. It is run across the world. If Azorus website goes down, you can run the Azorus software pointing to your node or something, or you're pointing to your Azorus node. And so that way the website is still up, all that data is still available. Everyone is still syncing with all the different blockchain data that's out there.
Right. How about Oracle data? Is that going to be an integral part of how Azorus functions in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's out of the question, right? Oracle data is definitely what's needed, and the way that I see it is it'll be as simple as like piping into our interface to show all that data. And so if someone wants to query, I don't know, the price of oil, right? And it's all on the blockchain, right? You can easily query that and visualize it, and maybe even juxtapose it with like the price of Ergo and the number of Ergo addresses with more than like 100 Ergo inside of it.
Right. For a regular individual that is not part of big data, or doesn't know how to basically understand a lot of the things that data scientists would when using something like Azorus, what would be the benefits for an everyday regular user when they, in the future, they go onto your site and they're able to use this platform? What could be the benefits for them?
Yeah, so I think there are two cohorts to this one. The first one is like the crypto native folks, right? You have the Ergo Explorer, which gives you granular data. You have the awesome Ergo Watch, which like summarizes a lot of the different questions that people might have. And then the way I see it is Azorus, right? Maybe you have a very specific question to say, I don't know, give me all of the wallets that have more than 100 Ergo stores, for example, right? Give me all the addresses for that. One, you may not know how to figure out that information, but two, you can ask like the community to create that view for you, right? Because it's there. You don't need to set it up yourself. You could maybe even create like a job bounty in the future, and someone would get that answer for you because the question is there. Because the platform is there for the tools are there for you to pick up that question.
Right.
So that's like the crypto native like questions, rich list, and all that fun stuff. The second one is like that I see that's going to be really important, like the learning aspect to it, right? And so the learning aspect has two subsections. The first one is learning how to code, right? You have a lot of online courses that use sanitized data, right? Everything's cleaned, everything is truncated, right, for the most part, and it's easy to learn, right? Because you can understand, you can take the abstractions and it manifests itself in code, and you can quickly see what's going on, right? And so the way that I see this being important is you have real world data to work with if you don't know where to get the data. If you don't know where to start, right? This is a good starting point on learning how to code, whether it's SQL, Python, or the R programming language. It's completely up to you. The second part of the learning aspect of it is understanding how UTXO, how that model works. And so for me, this is how I understood it, right? By digging into the data, understanding how inputs, outputs work, how do the different points join together, and then the resulting output from it. Before, I did not even understand how UTXO worked. I was like, oh, okay, well, it's just a bunch of fancy stuff, right? But when I actually started digging into it, I'm like, okay, it starts to make a little bit more sense on why the way the data is structured is a little bit better than other models out there. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I think the lack of familiarity with a lot of these tools, even the current ones like Dune Analytics, regular everyday people using that, and Glassnode is a bit, I suppose, easier to market because it's really like kind of like giving you a lot of the Bitcoin wallets and basic information for free. Yeah. And it's easy from a user experience standpoint. I think crypto, just to open up a discussion, it's not necessarily a question. Crypto suffers, the entire industry, from a lack of superior user interface, where people are just able to click, and see what needs to be done from, if your grandmother couldn't do it, then it's probably not great user interface. And I understand, the more complex things are, the harder it is to kind of offer it in sort of a piecemeal manner where everything is just easily accessible. But Ergo Watch does a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
Who are the other members of your team, and how important is user interface going to be when using Azorus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's 4 of us total. There's 3 others on the team. We have a graphic designer / art director, and he is very important for user interface. He is very important for user experience, right? We have experience building Web 2 products, right? But maybe there are some things that we just don't know that we don't know yet in terms of like what works for Web 2 may not work for Web 3, right? And so this is where the community feedback comes in. Maybe this is where like the open sourcing comes in, right? And so to answer your question directly, oh yeah, it's like very important. It's focused mostly on data scientists, blockchain analysts, right? But it doesn't mean that in the future we can't do like some WYSIWYG thing, right? Where someone can like drag and drop the views that they want to see, right? It's not out of the question. If that is where the demand points us to, and that if that is where where we get a majority of our customer base, then yeah, we should totally follow that follow down that route. 2 other people also on the team. We have a lead developer, currently anonymous for now because he is a staff software engineer at a Web 2 tech company that you might have heard of, right? And so so he's doing a lot of the stuff on the front end, back end. Then we also have a technical advisor, and then so he's helping us decide like what's the best route forward, technology stack. How should we do a hybrid model first, or should we like go straight to decentralization, right? Distributed computing. And the reason for that is we need to figure out like our runway, right? What's our runway? What's the cost associated with it? Right? If we build with tools that we're familiar with, then we can get going from the onset. If we're building with tools that we're not too familiar with yet, then it might take a little bit more runway to get us to where we want to go. But the cool part is we have all worked together in some capacity in the past, right? Because when you work in like Silicon Valley and everything out here in California, for the most part, you find people who you're like close with, you understand and work together with, right? And then you just know like, here's a tight knit group. You'll always want to work with a select few people. And so so the awesome part is like, we're like Web 2 folks, right? We grew up in Web 2, but now we want to like build like Web 3. We were too young at the time to build Web 2. And so now hopefully we're more mature, right? And we understand the space a little bit more to build the next generation of the internet. Yeah.
What would it take, you feel, knowing that you've kind of made that journey and bridged that gap between Web 2 and Web 3? What would it take, in your opinion, for other people coming from a Web 2 background, or even older people than millennials and things of that nature, to actually come and see the potential of building on here without necessarily focusing on the financial incentives that are kind of bringing way too much notoriety to the actual tech?
That's a good question. I didn't even think about that one. I think the crypto. This is something we talked about a bit earlier, right? Blockchain / crypto space has a branding period. Has a branding problem period, right? We have all of these fancy names, right? We have impermanent loss, for example. Like, what does that even mean? Like, why is it impermanent loss? Like for me, when I first tried DeFi, I was like, okay, do I even want to get into this? Why is it such a harsh word? You have cryptocurrency wallet, right? Oh, it's a wallet. Does that mean I need to create a new one? Or how do the seed phrases work? Why do I not like transfer my funds from one wallet to like another one? What do you mean by I just restore my seed phrases, right? So first of so the branding problem, casinos, gambling, all that fun stuff. Second one is like nomenclature, right? I think it's a lot of the terminology is confusing. We could probably change that a little bit, right? To make the transition a lot easier. Right, is the huge big one for me. The third one, making things easier to use, telling people that you're using the block. Don't even say, maybe a challenge is you don't even say you're using blockchain or cryptocurrency. It just works, right? No one's talking about like HTTPS, TCP, IP, right? People just know to interact with websites just by using the web browser. And then the fourth one goes back to the whole Ergo manifesto, technology versus culture, is talk about the vision, right? Talk about what the hell we're doing. Why is this even important? Right now, the narrative for people in the Web 2 space, Web 2 skeptics, is blockchain and cryptocurrencies are a solution that are trying to find a problem, right? That is the statement that most of these people understand. And so I think we, again, whether it's coming from the Ergo space or the broader cryptocurrency space, we need to change that narrative to say, well, no, here's all the different problems, hard money, everything else. Sorry, I was drawing blank right now, but you know what I mean, right? Here are all these problems that we've listed, and here's how blockchain and cryptocurrency technology can work, right? So fix the branding problem, fix the naming, talk about the vision, and then there was a fourth one that I forgot. But just rewind the video and then you'll know exactly what I'm saying.
No, I'm kind of sorry to lay that big question on you.
No worries, man. This is good. This is good. This is good because it helps me hone in our messaging, right? It helps me think broader, not just about Ergo, right? Not just about the UTXO, but the broader space. What the hell are we doing here? What are we building, right? And so these are good questions that we should always ask ourselves why we're in it for the long term, right? This is going to keep us in the game longer.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. How do you envision subscriptions being paid for Azorus? Will that be paid in ERG? Will that be paid in crypto, or will it be a fiat currency? At this point in time, do you think?
Yeah, so I think I see it being a hybrid model. So what that means is there will be like a Web 2 layer on top of it, right? The Web 2 layer, I think it's important to get blockchain analysts, data scientists from this different paradigm over to what we're doing. So the Web 2 layer will be like, credit card, fiat money, that type of stuff. But I also see like a Web 3 layer to it. And there's two parts to it. The first one is maybe if you run your own Azorus node in the future, it'll be free, right? Because we want people to run the node. We want people to decentralize the network. This incentivizes them to see all of this data, to see all these reports, but they're securing the network. So that's what we want. Then the second part of that is being paid in ERG, being paid in whatever cryptocurrency is out there in the future, right? Whether it's a stable coin, whether it's a cryptocurrency, it doesn't matter. We do see us accepting that in the future. How that's going to look like, I don't know yet, right? But those are like the three routes that we currently have in mind.
Right. Apart from Ergo, we have a couple of other blockchains in the UTXO alliance. I'm not sure yet of what the alliance actually will do, right? If you go to a website and all that, it's kind of vague. This kind of vague notion. We're going to work together, and we'll figure it out as we go. Which is fine. You got to start somewhere. You got to extend olive branches and hopefully find common ground on things. I try to interview a few members of the UTXO alliance and things like that.
Awesome work, by the way.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'll try to get to all of them. How good they are, however, whatever their shortfallings may be, I'll still try to cover all of them and see what they're trying to do going forward. Now, going away from Ergo for a second, what interests you as kind of a fun question about some of the other chains that maybe you don't see on Ergo yet?
Yeah, the first one two of them that comes to mind. The first one is the one you recently interviewed is Flux, right?
Sure.
I mean, they're part of the UTXO alliance or no? Sorry,
they are not. They are
okay.
not part of it. They are not part of it, but they are a serious project that. Yeah. But that's fine too. We can talk about Flux a little bit as well, but what about the UTXO alliance? Some of the other ones.
So we'll talk about that one later. The first one that comes to mind is Alephium, right? For me, at least, from a really technical standpoint, I think they have an interesting perspective on like how throughput is completed, right? Um, so when you think about like blockchain, right, every single block follows a certain or sequentially follows the order, right? It can only go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? It's a sequential step of it. What I think Alephium did really awesome, and it was one of those like, oh, I wish I thought of this sooner, right? If they created something called like block flow, and so block flow is based on the computer science concept of like a DAG, right? Direct
A cyclic.
Yeah, there you go. The cyclic graph.
Yeah.
Right? And so where it doesn't have to follow in sequential order, there are different dependencies, and you can have multiple blocks at the same time, but they eventually ladder up into each other, right? And so I think that's like really awesome in the way that they are taking that approach. And again, it was one of those like, oh, I wish I thought of this sooner. Why didn't I think of this, right? And so that one is most exciting to me, Alephium, and that's something that we are also active in their Discord. Well, active meaning we're just like for the degens for now, right? But we are also building some of the infrastructure to incorporate that one.
Yeah. Alephium, they're very friendly. I'm in there, talking with them for an interview, hopefully by the end of this, the following month, July. Some of the senior people, the core dev, Cheng Wang, very smart guy.
Yeah,
publishes a lot of papers about proof of less work and how to incorporate sharding as well, along with this block flow model that he kind of pioneered with this. So
and it's like really fast. Have you used it? It's like mind-numbingly fast in selling like transactions and stuff. So if you haven't tried it, check it out.
I don't know what to use it for. There's no Dapps on it yet.
I'll send you like 10 Alephium, and then you could just try to send it to like a bunch of wallets or something like that, right?
Okay.
You don't even need it. It's early, right? It's early stage.
Yeah,
so
very early.
Yeah.
No, they're great. I've been trying to draw like a few bridges intellectually between the two. So I'm in their Discord. I'm in a bunch of Discords, but it's a smaller team, and there's something nice about like discovering sort of like a gem in the rough early on, and just trying to see like, hey, how can I help? Can we have an interview? Can we just understand tech? What about apart from Alephium, any other ones that come to mind from the UTXO alliance right now?
Not too much, but I do know. I also reached out to a few people from the Nervos network, right? We're having some initial chats. Having some initial chats. I think what they're doing is pretty interesting, but I do not have a intelligent answer for you yet. So come back in a couple months, and I'll talk more about the different ones. Right?
Yeah, that I'd like to think that people shouldn't be confined to a box of a maximalism, because that kind of, we see how that goes with Bitcoin, is not very helpful for pushing the narrative forward. I mean, Bitcoin obviously it has a different use case. It's a commodity for the most part. It's not meant to be easily changed or mutable. It's kind of like this fixed technology, but more than I, technology just zooms right past you if you stay, stuck in some sort of other paradigm narrative. So, I try to have interviews as well with not just Ergo, because I feel like, okay, we're kind of regurgitating our own information. We're kind of, creating a circle jerk where we love Ergo so we love Ergo so much that we're just also
patting ourselves on the back.
Yeah, patting ourselves on the back and kind of saying, hey guys, but there's other serious things out there. And the more we open that narrative, hopefully the more collaboration we can have between other chains as well. Like the Rosin bridge is meant to help on board protocols that want to use the security assumptions of Ergo and things like that. So it's kind of inevitable, right? Don't wait for Charles or Alex or any of these other prominent people to say, okay, Cardano's okay. As long as it's Ergo and Cardano, we're good to go. When Cardano, it's great and all, but it's also like a completely different consensus layer that you guys probably don't even understand that well. But because these, these prominent members of these communities are coming together. You're just hopeful, you know, in the back of your mind, well, Cardano's in the top 10. Hopefully Ergo will be in the top 10. We just kind of, you know, include Cardano into what we feel, but it's kind of like baseless, right? It's kind of like, okay, just because a bunch of people you recognize, you get hope that, you know, somehow the price will go up and stuff like that. So it's kind of like not genuine for a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, we only include Cardano, but we're also Ergo maximalists. That's not kind of fair. So yeah, you're right. Nervos, Alephium. I know Flux isn't part of it, but
Komodo, right? Yeah.
Komodo has it's is bells and whistles from what I understand.
Yeah.
You know, kind of the atomic swap and things like that. I'm interested to interview them and just kind of learn more about what they have going on in the future, because their atomic swap is actually pretty damn cool. And I won't pretend like I know a whole lot about it, but I do know like it's really good, and they spent a lot of time developing it. Cardano's part of the UTXO alliance as well. No, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to your point, right? I think if you, a good analogy is like all of like the different car brands out there, right? There's BMW, Toyota, Mercedes, right? If you consider every single blockchain their own car brand, right? Everyone's going to use the same road. There's no point to be a maximalist, right? Even within that brand, every car type has their own use case, right? Maybe, I don't know. Subaru is only like for the people who care about like the outdoorsy type stuff, right? Those are the cars that they build. And you have the BMW, who are like the, you know, like the a certain image or car type. Yeah, you want to drive fast, whatever it is, right? That's what it's going to be. I don't think that it's going to be a single chain world. And I think you tweeted about this recently, right? It's
sure.
It's inevitable to be like a multi-chain world, and there's no point in having this spectator sport passion that only one is going to win, and it's going to be this chain. We should definitely branch out and think about the entire ecosystem rather than this single chain.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the main point. I tweeted that the future is multi-chain, whether you like it or not, kind of thing. Yeah. And I mean, there's too much talent in the space already for you to dismiss everything else that doesn't have. I know, you know, tokenomics are a bit of a touchy subject. How much you allocate for your team, how much you allocate for whatever you allocate it for, and Ergo is pretty much as pure as you can get. But there's also room, you know, Ergo, and to be neutral about this, Ergo has a bunch of challenges because they have a fair launch. Yeah. You don't have that immediate marketing. You don't have a way to short cut corners and get everything where you want it to be and just be in the top 10, top 50. And I think everybody understands it, but it's also important to understand we can't have 100 Ergos as well. And that there's going to be other teams that are formed differently, but as long as they're more focused on, you know, bringing about a better future for the blockchain space or the crypto space. You can't even say blockchain because some people use, they use different types of ways, you know, with the DAGs and the directed acyclical graphs and things like that. So it's almost difficult to even say just blockchain anymore, but there's going to be different solutions. There's going to be different solutions, and we'll see which ones, you know, live out and stand the test of time, whether, you know, you look at Zilliqa or a bunch of the other ones that we've already mentioned. I think Digibyte is part of the UTXO alliance. It's just too much to go around. But, you know, something that Alex said in our interview, when I interviewed him, he believes it's only going to be about 12 to 20 blockchains are actually going to matter as a layer one, and everything else should be built on top of those. So it's kind of to your point about car brands, like how many do you really see? You know, I'm sure there's hundreds, but dominantly, you only have really a handful, a couple, one or two dozens, and that's pretty much it. You don't need more than that. They all make cars. They all make them pretty well. The price points are competitive.
Yeah. I mean, 100 years ago, 100 years ago, you had like 1,000 car brands. Now you're down to like 20 to 50 or so. So I don't see that being out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah. So, what is kind of the roadmap for your team going forward? What are the major milestones that you hope to hit this year, maybe in the unforeseeable future? And when can we expect the Azorus to be something that people use?
Yeah. So I think for the first part of the question, there are, I would say, three big pillars. The first one is like foundational infrastructure, which is what we're currently going through right now. So that's like platform security, setting up disaster recovery and like high availability systems, right? Something I also alluded to earlier was like we have an internal discussion right now on like what does V1 look like, right? Do we want to go with something familiar where we say get this out the door, centralized version of it, right? Or do we just go straight to where we want to be in the future, right? Like a distributed storage and computing approach to it. That one will take a little bit more time, right? And so right now we're weighing the cost benefits of it, right? Internally. So that's like a huge thing that we're going on right now. We'd love to share that in the coming weeks or so. After that, we want to definitely integrate a lot of Ergo Dapps that are going on, right? Like I mentioned, Ergo Dex, potentially Ergo Pad and Sky Harbor. The second pillar is best in class experience, right? And so what I mean by that is like being able to run that data inside of straight from your web browser, having a visualization library, right? Dashboard creation and being able to share your analysis and insights, right? And then a DApp connector as well, right? The reason for that is you can have like usernames and passwords and like the traditional stuff, but wouldn't it be more awesome if you could just connect it directly from your Nautilus wallet, for example? And then after that, like the third pillar is cross-chain coverage, right? And so expanding to everyone else that we mentioned earlier, Bitcoin, Cardano, Ethereum, Nervos, like whatever else is out there, and then individual dApps that live within those UTXO ecosystems. So who are the Ergo Dexes of Cardano, right? Who are the Sky Harbors of Nervos, or if they even exist yet, right? How can we incorporate that? And so to answer your question, at least the first two pillars, I want to say 6 months based on our current bandwidth, right? But we'll see, right? Especially since we postponed our Ergo Pad IDO for now. Originally, based on the fundraising, we were expecting to do like 3 to 4 months or so, and since we're postponing that just by a little bit, maybe we're looking at 6 months and some change. And so, that being said, we want to make sure it's good, right? We want to make sure we wow people enough, at least the first version, right? It's not going to be as polished as what we have in the mockups, right? We want to say like, here's some of it. Start collecting some of that open beta feedback, right? And then improving upon it, right? And so, but this goes back to like the first pillar that I was talking about, right? Is like, how should we release it? Should we do like one big splash? Should we do incremental upgrades, right? Is there going to be demand for it yet? And so those are a lot of the discussions that we're going through. So if I were to give you an answer, we're looking at like 6 months and some change.
Yeah, relatively short timeline. 6 months go by very quickly.
Yeah.
Can you, for people like me that don't understand, for example, how you integrate the backends of other dApps very well, how do you do that? And what type of consent does the other dApp have to give you? Is it just kind of like, okay, we'll work together on this? And kind of what are the mutual benefits of doing that, apart from the obvious ones, right?
Yeah, so I think the most important one is, do these services, do they even have like a backend for us to use, right? And so, for example, well, let me start off by saying we're not going to go out and like talk directly with like Sky Harbor to say like, here are all of the requirements that we need from you, right? For you to integrate with our platform. What I envision, at least, going forward, right, is Sky Harbor eventually, if they do, they release their own backend. We see what they have, right? And then from there, then we pipe it into Azorus. And by piping in, it means taking their data, storing it into a database somewhere, whether it's distributed or centralized, and then surfacing that onto the web UI layer of Azorus. And there was a second question that I kind of lost in that train of thought.
Yeah. No, forgivable. I kind of give them out two punches at once, and you got to absorb both. The second part of that question was, what are the mutual benefits of doing that?
Yeah, and so the mutual benefits, I think it is twofold, right? Both on the customer side and maybe like the Dapps side, right? Mm-hmm. The customer side being one, if there was a service that they didn't know about, they can see it, right? They can see it directly inside the UI. Maybe they only want to look at Ergo, and they're like, oh, well, what is this Ergo bad thing, right? It could potentially provide some branding information, and they might dig deeper into it.
Right.
Also, going along with that is so there's that one. On the Dapps side is not only are you providing the data, but because it is a truncated version of the entire blockchain, you only need specific data points. And so what I mean by that is all of these Dapps, they have their information on the blockchain, but if these Dapps are providing their own customized backend services to say like, okay, there's all this information, we and our services only care about X, Y, and Z factors, it makes it easier for someone to understand what's going on in the backend, right? It's a shortened version of the entire blockchain. And so that gets people interested in it and digs deeper into the code as well.
Unrelated question. Where do you envision Ergo as it evolves over the next 5, 10, maybe even 20 years? In the sense of, you have this proof of work layer that's really built to be resilient and live long term, and ultimately your success also depends on the success of the blockchain, and you assume the same security assumptions. You can, God forbid, we do not avoid a 51% attack, which I don't. Yeah. I'm thinking of doomsday scenarios. With every experiment, you incur unintended consequences and risks, and if miners, and we're going to onboard a shit ton of miners soon enough with Ethereum going proof of stake, and they may not be as, responsible as the ones that came before. There might be soft fork proposals that don't make a lot of sense. So, I'm just thinking of the worst case scenario. How do you feel about Ergo as it evolves? Where do you see it being as you kind of go along that third-legged race with them as a blockchain, and as Azorus, continues to build on top of it?
Yeah, that's a good one. I do think what Ergo is doing is good, right? I do love the fact that we're thinking about the long term. We're thinking about all of the different players in the space, right? The different actors. You have the miners, you have the validators, you have the exchanges, you have the individuals who actually want to use the money. I don't know, actually. Let me get back to you. This is actually, I'm stumped on this one. You can even cut this out. But my answer, I don't know, man. Let me get back to you on this one. I haven't put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah, the long play and the short play are they kind of live in the same building, but not necessarily inhabit the same apartment. It's kind of, you're focused so much on building right now and getting a working product up and running that thinking about 5, 10 years on the line is kind of counterintuitive in a way. Yeah, like
I think so. Where it goes, where it and where I see it landing, I'm not too sure. What I do see that Ergo needs help on, right, and maybe that this will help guide that question as I talk it out, is onboarding, right? Onboarding meaning like getting people to use Ergo script. How does it work? Like, how do I even get started? So that's been on my to-do list for a while. Meaning, like, I also want to know how to develop Ergo script smart contracts. Right now, it's a little bit hard. Information's all over the place. I also don't have time to sit in like a deco class and watch a bunch of YouTube videos, right? Is there a guide that I can just follow along? So there's that one, right?
Yeah.
The second one is a lot of the services right now are very, very technical, right? Just to get up and running. So I do think that there needs to be some streamlined process on like how to use the Ergo mixer on your local environment. It took me maybe like an hour or two to finally understand it without like losing all of my funds, right? Is there a better way to do it? I don't know, right? I don't know the answer to that. So I think onboarding definitely, as well as streamlining some of the process. Mainly because Ergo is definitely geared towards very technical, very no offense to anyone out there, right? Nerdy / geeky people, right? And so we do a really, really good job of that. What we don't do so good, and this is what you mentioned earlier, is like the UI and UX of it. Are there ways that we can improve it? Once I think we can address that, then I can have a better sense of answering your question, like where do we see ourselves in like 20 years?
Look, Ethereum had great success, not only because they were first mover, but also because the Ethereum virtual library or virtual machine is just, and Solidity is just very, very easy to onboard people and get them started building whatever the hell they want to do, whether it's a Ponzi scheme with a crypto, whether it's actually something, something like a responsible lending protocol. I'm thinking of like Aave, knock on wood, right? I haven't used it personally, but it seems like a steady project, but we see Celsius going down, and I'm not sure what to think of that. So hopefully, well, the point is that Ethereum did a good job of being able to onboard people very quickly. And if Ergo wants to compete with Ethereum, it's not going to be enough to just have ties to Cardano or have it, a beautiful DEX. It's going to need people to, hopefully people that might even leave Ethereum because they're disillusioned with the soul seeking that they're doing, and then say, I want something better. I want something actually decentralized where everything just makes more sense. And if we want that, we're going to need that kind of somebody to do the ugly work of just laying everything out in an open source manner where anybody can just, with the qualifications, of course, just pick it up and run with it without even having to ask questions on Discord or on Twitter or something like that. Like,
and then waiting for an answer, right? Yeah. So good point.
Yeah, no. This is what we need in order to get to the next level. It's like exchange listings. Yeah, liquidity does a great job of moving around the blood of the corpus of Ergo, but it's not enough. I think that's kind of like a basic thing to get done that people understand very well, market making and things like that. But actually getting people to build the Dapps without the incentives of an Ergo hack or believing in the manifesto per se, that's going to be hugely important. Just people that say, hey, this makes more sense to me than what I was using before. So
apologize, didn't answer your question. So I answered like a side question, right? And so give me a few months and I'll come back with a better answer.
No, that's fine. It is a tough one. And I think it has to be difficult to answer, right? Because if it's easy, you're probably full of shit, or the protocol is built on greed and it's just like some facade that you're putting up is saying, hey, yeah, I can see myself being on Solana for 10 years. Like, no, you can't. Right. You don't know. And it takes a lot of time. And that was the same way with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin wasn't intrinsically worth anything from a financial point of view. But there was this promise of leaving a traditional financial legacy system behind and having a different type of system. And, the risk you incurred by buying Bitcoin or potentially losing it all on Mt. Gox or trading over the counter using PayPal accounts, those types of risks ended up being the reward you got from assuming those risks early on. before everything was priced in and people actually began to adopt it and use it. And hopefully with Ergo, I don't see why we can't emulate similar success from a third generation cryptocurrency point of view. And you know,
without the scams involved, but
yeah, without the scams involved, because hopefully a lot of those scams have been deflected onto other protocols that, you know, we can learn from a distance and say, okay, try to avoid those things if you come here. But so apart from that, Azorus and Ergo itself, the blockchain intelligence space, can you help us to kind of wrap things up, how, from an enterprise point of view, all of this data is actually going to be beneficial? What do people use big data for? How does that help inform them? Why would they want to pay the subscription at the top level? Why do they need this information about UTXO blockchains?
Yeah. So, so mini shill about myself, right? I've been doing, and I already mentioned this a couple of times, right? So I'll preface it with this, right? I've been doing marketing data science for better part of like 15 years or so, and so there are a few key learnings and benefits that I've taken with me over the course of my career, and hopefully I'll be able to impart that for to people who decide they want to use Azorus, right? So the first one is like data availability, right? This essentially levels the playing field between you and other players who may have better access to the data, right? Let's say it's like hedge funds or VCs or anything like that, right? And so the great part about blockchain data is it's there, it's readily available, and everyone has should have the means to be able to access it and use it the way that they see fit. The second one is data can be like a superpower, right? And so, meaning this with data, it gives you a vehicle for making well-informed decisions than if you did not have it. And so, what I always say to like the team is, if you were to pit Google, Facebook, Apple, and all of these Web2 tech companies together, who is going to come out on top, right? The answer, hopefully the answer is the company who has the better, cleaner, more efficient data pipelines as well, right? Data pipelines. And so the person who's going to come out on top is who's going to have the best data. And so this will give you a superpower. This will give you an edge over everyone else. So the fact that Azorus is able to provide this data from the get-go, right, without setting things up on your side, right, without doing all of these fancy stuff and managing all this code, that'll help you get that unlock that superpower that you need. But also the other side of the coin is at the end of the day, data is like a tool, right? It's how you use it that'll separate yourself from everyone else, right? How you build that competitive edge. And so even though everyone's using the same data, your business, your enterprise, you might have different questions, you might have different frameworks, right? Your audience, target audience will be completely different. But if you can better understand this data, how you're using it, how your competitors might potentially use it, you can build that competitive moat between what you're doing and what they're doing, right? And so long answer short, having the data available, making a superpower, but also at the end of the day, it is still a tool. It's not going to make you like the top 10, right? But it will give you that edge on how to better separate yourself from the pack. And so I think that last part is like really, really important.
Yeah. Do you know of any competitors actually building what you want to build on the UTXO framework of transactions yet? Or your team is really the first mover in this kind of niche sector of the crypto industry?
Yeah, so I think it is the first mover / idea, right? Ideas are worth a dime a dozen. If you can't actually execute it, then I wouldn't call ourselves the first mover yet. So first idea mover, I guess, right? And so I would say there's that. I would also say that maybe also on the UTXO side, there's not a lot of volume as opposed to like Ethereum, right? And so on the UTXO side, not so much. The one that we always keep our eye on is Dune Analytics. They've been doing it since 2018, so they have about 4 years ahead of us. Then they have a lot of VC funding and backing and all that stuff, right? We're starting from scratch, moving from the ground up, doing it completely grassroots. So we have big shoes to fill. We have a very tall order, right? But we hope to at least get there in a couple of years, and then maybe even surpass them, right? Because we want to go back to the original ideals of the internet, right? Decentralized ownership, and everyone having that data available to them to be able to make better informed decisions.
And Dune Analytics is primarily just focused on Ethereum and account-based models.
Yeah, so I think right now they are Ethereum. I think they're also Binance. Last I checked. Yeah, the last I checked. I don't. It might be also be maybe they're doing fundraising so that they can expand to other chains as well. Maybe even UTXO, but I don't think they've started that yet. I also see that being a possibility of them. It would make, if I were in their position, it would make sense to expand to other chains.
Got it. So you have a proven market and demand for this, and I urge people to continue following up on the developments of your project, because you're not only opening up new doors for Ergo, you're again expanding kind of the paradigm to include other chains as well, and kind of saying like how something built on Ergo can go past Ergo itself and just kind of, you know, just do something that would be better and a little more transparent for the space as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you said, or how you insinuated that, you know, one thing is to use the blockchain and the other thing is to compile all of this data into a framework that actually can make sense, even for the enterprise level, all the way down to just a retail investor or somebody curious about checking up activity, because those are two different things.
Yep.
If nobody's there to digest it, essentially a lot of valuable insights are lost. You know, to wrap this up, you know, I just want to thank you for taking the initiative with your team and actually building out something that can be used across multiple chains, not just one. And that you know, took the initiative of, you know, going from the peaks of a speculative ERG price all the way down to where are we at? For the record, we're at $2 pretty much in some change in end of June of 2022, which in the future, in my opinion, will sound ridiculous. But at this moment in time, what you're doing has very little profitability of building it out. But yet you're doing it anyway, yet you participate in the Ergo hack, and like this whole entire new space that most people like me weren't aware was even a thing to pursue is now becoming something that's coming to fruition, which is a UTXO blockchain intelligence database and platform for people to use. So, you know, thank you, and thanks to your team for pursuing it in the first place.
Yeah, man. Thanks again for having me. This is a lot of fun. I would love to do it again, you know, in a couple months. And so, again, thanks for having me. And it's a lot of, and I think it's needed. Oh, sorry, baby's crying. But I think it's needed. And, you know, I appreciate you giving me that platform and opportunity to spread some of the vision that we had set forth.
Yeah, no, the pleasure is all mine. I was really curious about seeing more about it and understanding more. I think the best interviews are the ones that I go in, at least on my end, least understanding, like how does this work? And you know, going back very briefly to a Flux interview, I had very little understanding of sort of like a decentralized cloud infrastructure. Like, how does this actually work from a non-tech background, and why is it significant? By the end, I'm like, wow, that was really enjoyable, because just like most viewers, they click on something, they're actually becoming more educated, as I am in real time at the time of the recording. And if we understand more about this space overall and the different use cases that actually will matter and can be applied in the real world, the better, you know? So yeah, thank you again for taking time for the interview. And yeah, of course, we'll do a follow-up when you have more updates down the line in the later half, in the tail end of 2022. Absolutely. So thank you again.
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
No problem. See you guys in the next one. Thank you for tuning in.